Thank you for taking time to attend the candidate forum for the riding of Waterloo. The Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce takes our role in the political process locally very seriously. We are a nonpartisan organization and work with all elected officials municipally, provincially, and federally. These candidate forums are an important opportunity for our members and the community to hear about the issues of concern and importance to the business community. We have today a full slate of 14 questions, I think, that have been developed in consultation with our various policy committees at the Chamber and being driven from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce Vote Prosperity Election Platform document. This is the second of 4 events we've organized in advance of the October 21st election. The debate yesterday for Kitchener Centre was held at the Sunbridge Hotel in Kitchener. We're here today, and tomorrow we'll be at Cambridge City Hall for the Kitchener South Hespeler event, and then on Thursday, Kitchener-Conestoga riding will be held, and we'll hold that at the Woolwich Arena in Elmira. As always, I want to thank our friends at 570 News. They've been great partners with ours in providing a moderator for these events and have for many years through provincial and federal elections. I want to thank our good friends at 570 News, and we're very fortunate that James Sebastian Scott, who is well known to me in our time, I see him every Friday when I tape the radio show, but he is a extraordinary executive producer and on-air personality, and we appreciate him doing all 4 of our sessions in advance of this provincial election. So without any further ado, over to you, James. Sorry, federal. I knew that.
Thanks, Ian. By the way, Ian, check's in the mail. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending. The format for this event will be 90-second introductory remarks from each candidate, followed by questions in priority areas identified by the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce through their advisory committees and responses from the membership at large. The questions will be asked in rotation, and the moderator reserves the right to terminate answers where appropriate. I will give 90 seconds of response time to each candidate as well. After all candidates have answered a particular question, a candidate can ask for a rebuttal on the comments made by any one of the other participants. The moderator reserves discretion on whether to allow the rebuttal and also terminate the discussion when required. At the conclusion of the debate, each candidate will be allowed 1 minute for closing remarks, which will proceed in reverse order from opening remarks. We will now commence with 90-second opening remarks. The candidate order as determined this afternoon is Laurie Campbell from the NDP, Jerry Zhang from the Conservative Party, Bardish Chagger from the Liberal Party, Erika Trobe from the People's Party, and Kirsten Wright from the Green Party. Jerry Zhang will answer the first question, and the previous rotation will continue. Concluding remarks will be in reverse order. We will start the debate with Laurie Campbell for opening remarks.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you to the KW Chamber for hosting the forum today. My name is Laurie Campbell, and I'm your NDP candidate. I'm Cree Métis with family roots in Montreal Lake First Nation in Treaty 6 territory. I have years of experience fighting for meaningful change by advocating for social, economic, and environmental justice issues. I've been pushing for these changes for the last 20 years, beginning when I worked for a police department advocating for victims of crime and traumatic events. Since then, I've been working in the post-secondary sector, and I currently work as director of Sadidja Rota, the Waterloo Indigenous Student Center at the University of Waterloo. And it's been a privilege to support students and assist them in accessing a quality education. Every day, I refine my advocacy skills by taking every opportunity I can to listen to and to learn from those around me. I have a strong work ethic, and I work hard to amplify community voices. And I'm not afraid to fight for what I believe to be socially, economically, and environmentally just. I'm excited to be championing the NDP's New Deal for People, which will work to establish universal pharmacare and dental care, and a climate change plan that will lower our emissions and create good jobs. And I also want to say that it isn't always easy to be an Indigenous queer woman in this space, but it's important that I'm here. On October 21st, I'd be honored to receive your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zhang.
Hi, my name is Jerry Zhang. I'm your federal conservative candidate for Waterloo. I'm an entrepreneur and a small business owner. I have a master's degree in computer engineering. I'm a computer chip site design engineer. I started my professional career at IBM in New York, then worked for a company called AMD for almost 10 years. So I started my own business almost 4 years ago. In fact, my first company was a proud member of KW Chamber of Commerce. So I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to all the hardworking people at KW Chamber of Commerce for promoting and advocating for Canadian business, including many small business owners like myself. Small business is the backbone of our country. Small business employed 70% of the total private labor force. So it is really troubling to see in the last 4 years, it has become more expensive than ever to run a business in Canada. Somehow the Liberal government believed small business owners are tax cheats with their unprecedented tax hikes on small business in 2017. And plus 4,300 new regulations added by this government since 2015, and now the carbon tax could raise the price of gasoline and heating. Small business are struggling. A new conservative government will continue to celebrate small business is the driver of prosperity, not merely as a source of revenue. So it is time to stop the current Liberal government's attack on small business owners. It is time for Canada's small business owners to get ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chager?
So I'm delighted to be here, and I'm very pleased to talk about the Liberal government's track for business. Over the past 4 years, over 1 million jobs have been created, over 75% of them full-time. Unemployment is down to the lowest levels in 40 years, and youth unemployment has improved even more. For you, that means more customers who can afford to buy your goods and services. Lowering taxes for the middle class helps even more. We lowered the small business tax rate from 10.5% in 2017 to 9% now. The Liberal Party understands that competitiveness means businesses need to continually upgrade equipment and other assets. You can now write off the full cost of machinery used in manufacturing and processing of goods. You can write off a larger percentage of other assets in the year you acquire them. You can even write off the full cost of specified clean energy equipment. That includes zero-emission vehicles. We did this while creating the best balance sheet in the G7 and lifting 900,000 people out of poverty. We created the Global Skills Strategy, which provides fast, temporary work permits for skilled, high-tech workers. Today, Canada is the only G7 country to have trade agreements with every other G7 country. We unmuzzled government scientists and brought back the long-form census. If re-elected, we'll cut corporate taxes in half for companies that develop and manufacture zero-emission technology. We'll make mentoring and training by the BDC and EDC free. We'll cut 75% of the fee to incorporate a federal business, invest in entrepreneurs that start new businesses, and the list goes on. I'm looking forward to a lively debate this afternoon, and I want to thank you, each and every single one of you, for making the time to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Trobe?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Erika Trobe, and I'm your candidate for the People's Party. I'm 57 years old. I graduated from the University of Waterloo with an honors BA in philosophy and economics. I did a master's degree in philosophy, and then I went to law school. For the last 30 years, I have been a court lawyer in both the civil and criminal courts, and throughout that time, I developed a reputation for hard work and integrity. I have a good nose for scams and liars, and as a Canadian, I can no longer tolerate the path that our great nation is on. I am also disturbed with the illusion of choice. Regardless of who we choose, we seem to end up at the same point at the end of 4 years. And as I watched the debate last night, the thought that ran through my mind is this was a circus, and I do not want to be part of a circus. I want to be part of real solutions to real problems. I am a fixer, and the People's Party has a bold, common sense platform that reforms areas such as balancing the budget in 2 years, lowers our taxes, corporate, personal, and farm, which is the only way to attract investment from foreign investors, from local investors, big and small, and to attract the skilled labor that we are short on. I would like to, as the People's Party will establish a per capita rate of immigration that is exactly the same as the US and Europe. We will deregulate to get the behemoth of government off our backs, and we will stop chasing carbon ghosts to solve, and we will solve real environmental problems that are dire. If you love free people and free markets, and if you want a leader that you can be proud of, you can vote for me, Erika Trobe, as your MP in the upcoming election on October 21st, and that will make Maxime Bernier our Prime Minister. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wright from the Green Party.
My name's Kirsten Wright. I'm running with the Green Party to be your MP for Waterloo. My background is in engineering, in systems design engineering. I graduated in 2007, began in robotics and embedded systems, and have more recently worked in making systems better and in social innovation, which is working with business people and policymakers to solve specific problems. I decided to run in this election because sitting with my kids and my grandparents, I'm not convinced, kids and my parents, I realize that we don't know that it will be in the same world when I sit with my own grandkids. Climate change is the biggest challenge we've faced as a civilization. And as an engineer, as an innovation-based community, I believe we have one chance to lead on this. This is our best opportunity to build for the new economy. Look, I'm an idealist. I want a better future for my kids. I want to use the best science to take us there. I'm also an engineer. When you're an engineer, you don't just hope things turn out for the better. You don't make out numbers about who might be prime minister, who might. You look at the facts, you work out the numbers, make a plan, and implement it. If we do, we can support small businesses and entrepreneurs. We can build innovative solutions so that we make a Canada that works for everyone, and we can solve our greatest challenges now while we can. The Green Party has been doing this for 30 years. We've been saying the same thing. We've been developing and working out those innovative solutions that will move us forward together. We are the only party with an evidence-based plan. We have a costed plan that is fiscally sound. I would say if parties have not yet released and costed their full plan, they're lying to you about what's in it. We need to know where the revenue's coming from, where it's going, and we need to be honest about the science, and we need to be honest about the economics. And that requires listening to Nobel Prize-winning economists and listening to the facts. And I know that this is the kind of community that does that. This is a community that leads and builds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go on now to the question and answer portion of the debate. I would like to remind all the candidates that I'll give 90 seconds for a response, and we'll move on to the next candidate after that. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the largest business organization in Canada, has asked for a royal commission to study the national taxation system to implement fairness and simplicity for all classes of taxpayers. There has been no comprehensive review of the tax system in 50 years. And the system is a patchwork that does not serve individuals or businesses in the 21st century. Would you support this Royal Commission? And if not, what would you propose to fix the tax system? And to respond first, Mr. Zhang from the Conservative Party.
I think Royal Commissioner use Royal Commissioner to study tax, the higher taxation in current Canadian system. You know, I have to see the cost, because we are, all the families are facing higher living costs already. We're paying higher tax. We're also, you know, with all the other living costs are rising. So, you know, we are having affordability problems, and the study itself should only make sense if the cost is adjustable. Because if you look at the history of over the Canadian history, those Royal Committee only were created to address really serious crimes, really serious crisis. So my answer to your question, James, is we have to evaluate it. In terms of reducing tax, of course, the current challenge every Canadian family facing, we have a serious plan to reduce the tax. We will have a universal tax cuts. We will have tax credits for the children and arts and language tax credits for every family, and for different age groups we have senior tax credits, so to address the higher taxation issues. That's my answer.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, thanks. Ms. Jagger?
So under the Liberal government, we already have one of the lowest tax environments in the G7. Our tax policy strongly encourages investment in increased productivity and is helping transition to greener businesses. I think when it comes to tax changes, it's important to note that we actually did release a tax discussion paper. And rather than talk about policy and the importance of reviewing the tax code, because it was a temporary measure when it was brought in, there was a lot of fear-mongering that took place. So rather than actually talk about the issue of the day, it's important that we have these conversations. So during that discussion, what I did is I reached out to chamber members, I reached out to local citizens, I reached out to entrepreneurs to hear what their concerns were and what their feedback was. And we were able to contribute in a meaningful way. I always say that Canada needs more Waterloo. Waterloo is the only riding that I know of where the MP, the MPP, and the mayor are all located in one building. And that's because most citizens don't always recognize what level of government they're dealing with. But campaigns might be partisan times, but once you're elected, it's important that we put partisanship aside and work together to ensure that things like the tax code actually work for the very people that we are serving. Liberals do have a costed platform, and it was vetted by Kevin Page's Institute for Fiscal Studies and Democracy, and it was graded as overall good. There's only one party that's sitting in front of you today that doesn't have a public platform, and it's important that we note and ask why. Canadians need to know what they're voting for this election, and what we have done is we put a solid, comprehensive plan forward that takes not only the economy, but the environment, as well as the social deficit into mind as we make decisions and help Canada move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Trobe?
Thank you. So the People's Party doesn't require a report because we already know what to do. And the key to solving our tax burden is to get the budget under control. We will balance the budget in 2 years. At that time, we will be in a position to reduce our corporate and farm tax rate to a flat 10%. We will reduce our personal tax rate to 2 flat rates, one between $15,000 and $100,000 to 15%, and any income above $100,000 will be a flat 25%. We will abolish capital gains. Canada is one of the few countries that has a capital gains tax, which is a direct disincentive to investing. Every promise that is made by a politician at election time for a benefit is permission for government to reach into your left pocket so that it can give you back a little bit of money in your right pocket. So we don't make those promises. The burden on the debt of this nation is at a crisis. We are paying $30 billion every year before any money goes out elsewhere towards interest on past foolish spending. We have to pay the piper. We have to get our house in order. And the only way we can do that is to attract investment. The People's Party is an investment incentive to you and the big corporations and the foreign investors. Because when you invest $50 at the end of the month, and if you do well and you make $25, you will keep that $25. The bureaucracy attached to the TFSAs and the RRSPs is huge, and that comes off the top as well. So
Ms. Trobe, please finish your statement.
Thank
please.
you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So our tax platform is set. You can see it online.
Thank you. Ms. Wright?
Yes, absolutely. I support independent science to help us develop the simplest and most fair tax system. Let's be very clear. The current system is neither the simplest nor the most fair. And it is not enough to try to buy votes with a patchwork of credits without even telling us what they are. And it's not enough to say that it's too expensive to get the right information. The current system is costing us billions of dollars in innovation and lost potential. We need a government that both understands where we are stronger together, how we can build infrastructure and potential. We need government that understands the point of government, doesn't want to simply dismantle it, and that understands the point of business and the point of entrepreneur and the civil society and local solutions. We actually need both of those things to work together, and there is no story or fairy tale that substitutes a deep understanding for how that actually works. And a big part of that is a simple and fair tax system informed by independent evidence and independent economists. That's an investment worth paying for.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
Excuse me. Thank you for your question. As MP, certainly I would work with the constituents in my riding, which would be you to take forward what the constituents want. And so if this is something that the constituents want, then I would be more than happy to take it forward. But within our plan, we know that there's an issue with the tax system, and this is why we've said things like we will increase tax fairness by raising taxes on multimillionaires. So asking those who are making a net value of over 20 million to pay their fair share and to pay an extra 1% on every dollar over that 20 million. That gives us generate $70 billion over 10 years. We would also think that we need to strengthen enforcement on tax evasion, which have cost working people too much for too long. And we recognize that money just can't be moved around from one pocket to the other and hidden in tax havens. And we would close those loopholes. And we'd also close, the corporate tax loopholes, which generates billions of dollars in revenue as well. We believe in everybody paying their fair share of taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is, what is your party's overall position on tax cuts for business and personal taxpayers? And the first to answer, Ms. Chagger.
Thank you. So after we did do the review of the tax code, or we endeavored and tried to do a thorough review of the tax code, we were able to make constructive changes, and at the end of it was the result of lowering of the small business tax rate to 9%. It is the lowest of the G7, and it does create a preferential tax rate for our job creators. And I'll tell you, over the last 4 years, Canadians have created over 1 million jobs. As I said in my opening, 75% of them are full-time, good-paying jobs. When it comes to youth unemployment, it is the lowest we have ever seen. So there's a lot of commentary out there about young people don't have jobs. They do have jobs. They're in the new economy. They're in the green economy. To ensure that we continue being competitive, we are proposing an immediate write-off of manufacturing machinery and equipment, an immediate write-off of specified green equipment, including zero-emission vehicles. Actually, some of this we already do, because that's about modernizing and being able to compete globally. So Canada has 36 million people. We are a trading nation, and that's why it's important that we have trade deals with every other G7 country. Furthermore, we have signed the CPTPP, which opens up markets for Canadians, as well as signing CETA, which gives us access to every other European country. So I think it's important that we not only look at taxes, but we look at the economic standing of our country. We did lower taxes on middle-class Canadians by increasing them on the wealthiest 1% of Canadians. When it comes to the Canada Child Benefit, families with children that need the most are getting the most today, tax-free, and families with children that have the most are not taking that benefit. What we have seen is an economy that's growing, more Canadians that are better off today than they were 4 years ago. And I believe that we need to continue progressing with a progressive plan, and I believe that we have the best approach.
Thank you. Ms. Trobe, what is your party's overall position on tax cuts for businesses and personal taxpayers?
The position on the tax cuts, I think I've already addressed. A flat tax for all corporations, big and small, of 10%. I've already addressed the tax rates that we are advocating for with the personal exemption increase to $15,000. On the point about subsidies, that is something that the People's Party is completely opposed to and will eliminate. Government does not create wealth. Government does not create prosperity. Investment creates prosperity. Subsidies, usually favoring large corporations, create market distortions that destroy small business, the competitiveness of small businesses. So the People's Party is absolutely committed to eliminating all the corporate subsidies and other inefficient government interventions, bailouts, regional development grants, conditional loans, loan guarantees, all of that, including subsidies and tax credits. And this will specifically generate a savings to government, to federal government, of between $5 billion and $10 billion every year. The reduction of the corporate tax from the current 15% down to 10 will, when measured, will make about a $9.5 billion more available to business. It is a fundamental rule of economics that the lower your taxes, the higher the investment. And that's where growth, that's where prosperity, and that's where jobs come from. It comes from you and people like you who would like to benefit and enter the marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wright?
Yes, we support reducing the share of the tax burden carried by individuals and small, medium-sized, and locally grown businesses. I would fight to reverse some of the unfair tax increases just on small and medium-sized businesses. And in order to support and continue to build our competitiveness and a Canada that works for everyone, we also argue for bringing our top-level tax level on corporations up to in line with what our largest trading partner has post Trump's large controversial tax cuts. And so that primary impact of that is on large banks. We thought that there would be greater investment, but what we've seen is a concentration of dead assets which need to get moving into the most productive areas of the society. We also support removing all subsidies on oil and gas and redirecting towards innovation, towards growth, towards a clean economy that works for all of us. And Waterloo can lead in this. This is an opportunity for us. So yes, absolutely, a smaller share on individuals and small and medium-sized businesses and locally grown businesses, and reversing some of the unfair burden that has been increased recently.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Campbell?
Of course, we think that people should be paying and corporations should be paying their fair share, and that is an issue in this country where we're not seeing certain individuals and corporations pay their fair share. It's true that the debt interest compromised our ability to invest, which is why priorities in governments matter. Partnering with small and medium businesses and supporting those businesses through tax credits and tax breaks is the way to grow local economies. And you know, we have 3 priority areas that we think will help grow our economy, where we can put money back in people's pockets. And looking at those areas are universal pharmacare, our education, which we know is key to creating an innovative economy, and also growing jobs. And switching to our green future, we will create 300,000 new jobs during that transition so that people can realize our new green future.
Thank you. Mr. Zhang.
So I just want to clarify the fact is the current 9% small business tax was proposed by conservative government, and the Liberal government simply delayed this, and finally, when they did act, lower the tax to 9%, it was too little and too late, and the damage made already on Canadians' competitiveness. So in 2017, Liberal government made a major tax hike on small business. So our tax cut plan will address these two tax hikes happened during 2017. So the first one is the tax increase on small business investments. We will repeal that tax increase. The second one is the spouse. We were exempt spouse from tax increase on especially on small business dividends. So that's the tax cutting portion, but don't forget, we also have red tape problems. So to give you some of the facts, according to a Canadian Chamber of Commerce reports, before Justin Trudeau took office in 2015, there's 131,000 federal regulations on the book. But by the end of 2018, the number increased to 136,000. So that was increased more than 4,300 just red tapes and regulations. So we have a plan to reduce those regulations by 25%. And we will, for the future regulations, we will implement a 2-for-1 rule for any regulations to be considered into the government. And we will also assign a minister just reporting, who's going to reporting directly to the Prime Minister and to lead this red tape reduction efforts.
Mr. Zhang, could you please finish the thought?
Yep. So,
Thank you.
All the goal is championing to restore our competitiveness and champion Canada's small business to the world.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chager, you wanted to respond to Mr. Zhang?
Yes, thank you. Fact, the tax rate for small businesses in Canada is 9%. Fact, when we took office, it was 10.5%. Yes, we've said the Conservatives had that plan, but we wanted to review the tax code as we got to 9%. I actually think that's an important thing to do because we need to modernize our institutions and make sure they continue to work. What the Conservative Party chose to do is play politics, and they actually voted against the 9% reduction for small businesses. And I can understand that in politics, you're the opposition, and you want to vote against a budget document. But what did they do next? They took the House of Commons through 30 hours of voting, line by line of every implementation. One of those lines was the reduction of the small business tax rate to 9%. What did the Conservatives do? Voted against it. So within our plan, we're saying no tax on the first $15,000 of income, which will actually save each family $585 a year. We're saying increase the basic amount of personal tax credit to $2,000 per year, benefiting those earning under $147,000. We're saying let's cut loopholes to ensure fairness, and we've already started this work. We will have committed to undertake a comprehensive review, spending and tax expenditures, and modernize anti-avoidance rules to stop large multinational creating complex tax avoidance. The last thing I just want to say really quickly, fact. We have memorandums of understanding with the U.S. when it comes to regulatory cooperation. Let's not believe that Canada stands on its own. We are connected to the United States. You can pick your friends, you can't pick your family. The largest border of any two countries. We also have a memorandum of understanding with Canada and the European Union when it comes to regulatory cooperation. That means we're not just talking about it, we are acting to ensure that we have the best condition for success for our entrepreneurs, for our economy. I agree that governments don't create growth, but we can make strategic investments to ensure that growth takes place and that Canadians and businesses can succeed. And that's exactly why we are seeing the highest growth in the G7, because we are investing rather than taking the approach of austerity that we saw under 10 years of the previous government.
Thank you, Ms. Chager. Next question, Ms. Trobe will begin to answer this one. How will your party address fiscal responsibilities, most notably debt and deficits, against spending commitments?
Well, as I've indicated, top priority for the People's Party is to balance our budget in just 2 years. We are the only party to have made that commitment, and the rate of growth of our debt and our deficit is a burden that not only our kids but our grandkids will have to carry. Big debt and big deficit is a disincentive for foreign investors, for skilled workers to come to Canada. So you can have the most generous policy you want. They are going to do their due diligence. They're going to look under the hood, and they are going to see that Canada has an out-of-control debt and deficit problem. So before we can establish credibility with investors, we have to bring down that deficit. We have to balance the budget, and Mr. Bernier and the People Party will do that in just 2 years. After that, the money will come in forms of investments, and we are going to be splitting a bigger pie. Right now, the pie is shrinking, and the slice that gets taken out first is the deficit, and that one is growing. So we are going down a road of a shrinking pie with a bigger slice right off the top for interest, and that is not sustainable. It is absolutely critical to tackle that deficit. It affects us and our future very fundamentally. It is not just a number. It has to be tackled, and we will do that in 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wright?
Thank you. Let's be very clear. The Conservatives are running on a platform of tax loopholes. These are costly, and they haven't even told us what they will cost. The People's Party is running on a platform of dismantling Canada's system of government and our role within the international system, as well as our support for business. The Liberal Party is running on unending deficits right through boom times. The Green Party is the only party that has a costed plan that gives us a clear target for cutting the deficit in 5 years that you can trust and where the numbers work out. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
Thank you. So, we know that oftentimes the cuts from Conservatives and what the People's Party is suggesting are going to mean cuts to services. And cuts to services are what cost us in the long run. And coming back to some of our priority areas where we would implement universal pharmacare, we know that that is a benefit down the road. I was speaking to somebody in our community just the other day they're a young couple with a toddler, and the wife has diabetes, and it costs her $250 a month to have her medication, but they don't have health coverage outside of with their employment, and so that has to come out of pocket. And at times when they have had to make a choice between taking care of their family's needs or their child's needs, she has had a gap in her medication, and that costs us $1,500 a day to have her in the hospital. So when we're looking at a long-term way of reducing debt, we know that putting services in place that people need is what will reduce that debt overall.
Thank you. We'll finish with the rest of the candidates and we'll come back for debate. Mr. Zhang.
So the total accumulated national debt is already $70 billion. To give you an idea, is almost every family, Canadian families, carry about $50,000 debt. So, my liberal colleagues, they like to call it to say it is safe because the GDP to debt ratios is 30%, but it's simply they forgot a fact that there are also provincial debt on top of the federal debt. So Canada has been enjoying as a AAA credit. So Canada, so much better. Canada has been enjoying AAA credit ratings for years, and we are the only 11 countries with a AAA rating. So, when you plan your family plannings, you want to save money for the rainy days, but our liberal government, they spend during good time, they borrow money during good time. There's economical cycles. There will another economical cycle coming. So are we ready for the rainy days? Are we prepared to pay those monies? And with the ever higher debt, just another fact. Remember, 4 years ago, Justin Trudeau promised a balanced budget. We all know it didn't happen. Now he even increased the deficit to a $27 billion billion. So you can imagine how the deficit is going to keep going up. So are we ready to pay that, especially when there's economic downturn comes and because the federal and the provincial ratings, provincial debt added up together? What if our credit ratings has been dropped? The interest is going to increase. The interest is going to increase, and with all those factors adding up together, I think Canadians are not ready to face this challenge.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang went on just because of his microphone issues. So, Ms. Chagger.
Today, we have the best balance sheet in the G7. The debt to GDP ratio is good and declining. It's 50% of the EU average and less than 1/3 of what the US is. As Mr. Zhang mentioned, AAA debt rating, the only other G7 country as good is Germany. Moving forward, we've committed to crack down on unfair loopholes. Our plan is costed and verified by Kevin Page. The Conservative Party has no written platform, so we can only know what they will do. And we've seen this happen before in Ontario. There was no platform that the provincial Conservative Party put forward, and now we see the decisions that they're making, and they are cutting on the backs of Canadians. We, the Liberal Party, will continue to invest in infrastructure, innovation, and people to continue our strong growth, and we will maintain a decreasing debt to GDP ratio. It's really important that we recognize that we're making tough decisions. The national debt, the deficit are of concern to me, but I'm also concerned about the infrastructure deficit of our country. I'm also concerned about the environmental deficit of a country, and I'm also concerned about the social deficit of our country. The number of people over the age of 65 is greater than the number of people under the age of 15. These are factors that we need to consider. And I'll wait till my rebuttal. And I just want to say, so these are all factors that we consider, and it's important that we take a holistic approach as we move forward, and it's important that we actually talk about policies and facts rather than slogans, as we're seeing from some of my colleagues today.
Thank you, Ms. Chagger. Ms. Trobe, you wanted to respond to Ms. Campbell's point?
Yes, and it's a point that Laurie and Kirsten touched upon, and I want to clarify that the People's Party is not an austerity program party. We are not preaching austerity and cutting services. What we want to do is to make sure, first of all, cutting corporate subsidies is not austerity. That's eliminating cronyism and bailouts. So we are taking the position that government does not belong in subsidizing businesses. We have innovative solutions to address our healthcare crisis. If there's an opportunity to explain that, I will do that. And we are also reviewing how the country treats equalization payments among the provinces, because our equalization formula is fundamentally unfair, and we plan to revisit that. So what the People's Party is doing is not cutting services. We are going to get efficiency and fairness in the way the federal government spends money and collects money. With that, our healthcare system will get the remedy it needs, because Canada right now has the longest wait times and shortages of the civilized world. We have very specific ideas about how that can be fixed. But no, we do not advocate a reduction of social services. Absolutely not. We will make it easier and more feasible for the provinces to provide the vital social services that we require. Thank you.
Ms. Chagger, did you want to respond on this question?
Yes, I was just going to talk about rainy days real quick.
Sure.
Let's talk about rainy days. Under Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin, what we did is we set up a contingency fund exactly for that, for rainy days. And we wanted to ensure that we would have savings, because you just never know what the climate might be, and these are the realities. When the Liberals were out of office and the Conservative Party came into office, they had a $13.9 billion surplus. That surplus disappeared within 2 years. 10 years later, they provided the Liberal government that was elected in 2015 a 1.8 or 1.9, let's be friendly, let's say under $3 billion surplus. But that surplus came for taking $4 billion out of the contingency fund. To pay one credit card off with another credit card is not smart fiscal policy. And yes, I'm proud to have a father that has made sure that I understand what interest is, I understand what my cost today will be my interest expenditures tomorrow, so I try to be really responsible. But if we talk about rainy days, I think it's important that the Conservatives recognize that they emptied out the rainy day fund of the country to provide an artificial balance or artificial surplus to the Liberal Party that took government in 2015.
Mr. Zhang, in response?
Yes, it's not it's not we borrow money. It's about the spending. It's about the out of control spending, and without a balanced budget within a site. That's the problem. And if you look at the current spendings, how many programs we can save? For example, with all those corporation handouts, right? Why we give $16 million to Loblaws? Why we give $40 million to BlackBerry, who said they don't even need this money? It's all those spendings that are we need to control. And beyond that, my Liberal colleagues keep mentioning the provincial government. The provincial government just been in power for 1 year, and they are trying to fix the crisis a previous Liberal government had created in the past 13 years. Can we just focus on current government? And beyond that, sorry, I lost my track myself. But anyway, my point being, is the we have a plan to cut down $1.5 billion just corporation handouts. And we also believe there are 25% of the foreign aids we're giving to a lot of the developed countries, which is not creating, not benefiting Canadians and not creating Canadian jobs. That's the areas we definitely can review those areas, and then we can save those fundings and back into to creative Canadian jobs.
Thank you. Any response? Yep.
Awesome.
One last quick response.
I'll be quick. So just to counter that, and it's not really about talking about different levels of government, and respectfully, you have actually mentioned the provincial government, Mr. Zhang, more times than I have, so let's just call a spade a spade. People are listening, we're having the conversation right here. And people in Waterloo, as Canadians, we're smart people and we hear. When there's no plan to compare against, I can only go against what we've seen. I can only go against what happens in Ontario. And when it comes to the provincial government, they are spending more this year than any Liberal or Conservative government has before them, and they've cut more than any provincial or Liberal government has before them, yet they're spending more. It's a question I have, and I would like to know where that money is going, but that's not for you to answer. We know that in Waterloo Region, there was just a report based on evidence that was released because we believe in evidence-based decision-making, and it said that labor shortage for skilled workers in the Waterloo Region is increasing. That's a challenge. So what have we as a Liberal government done federally? We are investing in skills training, $2.7 billion a year to enhance training, employer sponsorships for all provinces except for Quebec. We worked with the local tech community right here because they can't get the skills that we need when it comes to growing businesses. We are a startup nation. We want to be a scale-up nation, but we need that talent to come. So what do? We have fast temporary work permits for skilled high-tech workers. When businesses say, this is the talent that I need, they can vouch for them. We allow them to come in two weeks now so that it doesn't take as long and that businesses can grow. Youth employment strategy has helped 33,000 vulnerable youth get the skills they need to go to work and also be able to succeed in school. I'm born and raised in this community. My grandparents and my parents immigrated from India, born at St. Mary's Hospital, as is my sister. When she graduated from university and she went to go find a job, the first thing they said is, you have no Canadian work experience. The investments that we are providing are to ensure that the youth of today have the work experience they need for the jobs of tomorrow, to ensure that they get meaningful employment and that they are able to succeed. This is the difference between the Conservative Party and the Liberal. Austerity, investment. Our investments show you that our plan is working, and it's a public plan. Thank you.
So my liberal.
Mr. Zhang, quickly, we have to move on.
Okay, use the provincial policies again. We made it very clear in our platforms, we will continue to keep all the social and healthcare transfer at 3% increase each year. That's being approved by parliamentary budget officer. So we don't need to cut those programs.
Thank you. The Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce has, for 20 years, led efforts to recruit family doctors into our region. What does your party propose to address the national doctor shortage? Ms. Wright, to respond to that first question.
Improve programs to train and reskill people when they come in for immigration programs, as well as managing supply of doctors and structuring the supports to build, to recruit doctors locally. Ultimately, it is an area where countries that have done a better job of recruiting and streamlining the training for doctors do a better job because it's a less unwieldy program, but that's a deeper structural change that I personally would be advocating for and fight very hard for if I were elected MP.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
Thank you. Well, I think one of our issues is our foreign credential system. We don't need more doctors driving our taxi cabs in our community. What we need to strengthen is our foreign credential system and develop a national strategy that allows skilled workers, in particular, in this instance, the question you're asking is about doctors, to be able to have their credentials fluidly transitioned, to recognize them so that they can enter into our medical system faster, because we know that having the medical system and a good healthcare system will contribute to having a healthy economy, and it will transition families into our communities easier when they can come with the credentials and have them vetted and be able to work in the fields that their professional background is in. And it will take away the added burden and stress of people coming here and not being able to work in the fields that they're in. And we know that having a good health system, it's a social structure and it keeps us competitive and it will save us money down the road.
Thank you. Mr. Zhang?
Yeah, I would. That's an excellent question. I would say there are two directions to address the current problem. Number one is we're simply losing our doctors to the south of the border because our environment is our economy is not competitive enough. A lot of doctors, they can get more money in the south of the border. So we still have to address the how do we make the environment more attractive to have our doctors to stay here, not only economically but also from a government administration's perspective. That's number one. Number two is again, I want to echo what Laurie said, is there is a stream of very qualified medical personnel. We can get them from through immigration system, but our current immigration system is out of control. As we need to take back of the control and to encourage more skilled workers, especially all those medical people who has medical experiences. We need to get those people into our country with the support in credential system, for example. That's the two directions I think we took to address this problem.
Thank you. Ms. Jagger, on the doctor shortage?
So Canada is a confederation. The federal government sends your tax dollars to the provinces. Provinces then deliver you services such as healthcare. I want to put on the record that a Liberal Party will always support a publicly funded healthcare system. Everyone deserves access to good healthcare. When it comes to foreign credential recognition, and I will share with you that I used to work at the Multicultural Center, and I actually coordinated the Global Skills Conference here in town. And one of the challenges is that people would come to Canada as doctors and other professions, but they would not be able to practice in Canada. The challenge was the regulatory bodies and the professional associations actually often fall under the provincial government. So what we have done is tried to build better relationships with provinces and territories and municipalities so that we can actually address this area. An area that does fall under federal jurisdiction is the Foreign Credential Recognition Program. So we have included a loan pilot program that allows 1,800 people to get a loan to be able to satisfy their skills and recognition for Canada, which would allow them to practice. Another area that falls under the provincial jurisdiction is apprenticeships, the education. So a lot of people that we have that are going through our education systems are not able to get apprenticeships, which means they're not able to practice in Canada. What we have done with the immigration system, and please don't let anyone tell you, we have one of the best immigration systems in the world, and it ensures the safety and security of every Canadian. That is a fact. Unless you are Indigenous, we wouldn't be here. Everyone immigrated at some point. So I want to ensure that we know that today's immigration system isn't bringing highly skilled individuals such as doctors to Canada for them not to be able to practice. We are bringing to Canada the exact skills that we need in Canada to ensure that these people can contribute in a meaningful way, obtain good paying jobs, pay their fair share of taxes, and thereby being able to allow the municipality, the province, and the country to succeed. So we are observing very closely what the labor market needs are. And the last plug I'll make is I used to be on the workforce planning board for Waterloo Wellington Dufferin's board, and that's work that they did. The provincial government under the Liberals did fund that so that we could see where the labor needs were. Unfortunately, the current government has not done that provincially.
Thank you, Ms. Jagger. Ms. Trobe on the doctor shortage.
Thank you. In order to address that doctor shortage meaningfully, we have to take a look at the root cause of why we're where we are. And we are not attracting skilled foreign workers. We are only at 26% currently of our immigration numbers. And the reason for that is skilled workers have the pick of the litter in terms of where they would like to go to. Anybody who wants to work in medicine is not choosing Canada. So we need to be realistic about the kind of economy we have and the indirect consequences it has on something like healthcare. But the reason our healthcare is broken is that every government is sticking to the outdated old Healthcare Act. And the People's Party will remove it. We will get rid of Canada's Health Act, and we will replace it, bringing Canada into the same league as every other OECD nation, and give an option for private models provincially. So Canada has the dubious honor of being one of 3 countries with only public health care, and those 3 countries are Cuba, North Korea, and Canada. Every other country has the public healthcare system, which we will never get rid of, but they also allow people to get out of the line and to take pressure off the system through private options. So how do you attract doctors? You give them the same incentive as you and I in opening up any kind of business. You give them the ability to plan a business, like lawyers, like everybody, to open up an office and to make some money. That will take the pressure off the existing system of shortages. And I mean, we just laid off 40 nurses at Grand River Hospital, not because there are no patients, but because the system is broken. So we need to acknowledge that. It goes back to the Canada Health Act. We need to allow the profit motive, the free market to exist in medicine. It makes no sense to me why I can pay top dollar to get cosmetic surgery, but I cannot pay a doctor to give me essential medical needs. Why I
Ms.
cannot
Trobe,
pay
can
a
you finish
doctor.
the point, please?
Okay, so we're going to do things differently. We are going to go to the root cause of these problems, and 4 years from now, we will have a different healthcare system. Thank you.
Did you want to respond, Ms. Campbell?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Just to one thing that my Liberal colleagues said, about our public health system. We do have a tiered health system in this country, and you don't really have to go much further than to look to Indigenous peoples in this country or to the young family that I spoke about earlier who doesn't have access to the medication that they need because of cost barriers. Our plan moves to a universal pharmacare, and we know that that will provide us benefits down the road and save us money.
Thank you. On to the next question. Please explain your party's position on Pharmacare Reform and what are the expected costs to the taxpayers? And we'll begin with Ms. Campbell.
Okay, so we know that people are making tough choices when it comes to affording the health services that they need, and nobody should have to choose between filling a prescription and putting food on the table, and people shouldn't have to be thinking about cutting their pills in half in order to save them and extend the life of them. We do have a tiered health system in this country. Nearly 2 million Canadians reported not being able to afford one or more of their drugs in the past year, often resulting in additional doctor visits and hospital admissions. And this is what taxes and costs our health system. Our new deal for people will expand healthcare, starting by introducing Pharmacare, saving Canada $4.2 billion. Instead of padding the pockets of pharmaceutical industry, with our plan, families will save more than $500 a year, even if they already have some sort of benefits within their employer. And it will also save businesses, and small businesses can save them up to $600 per year per employee. And when I was speaking to a couple of small business owners in our town, they were really excited about that because they were in the trades field, and they know the benefit of having their employees have their basic health needs covered and how that will impact them in the workplace. And they wanted to reinvest some of that money to grow their business. And one business actually wanted to reinvest some of that money to expand, the universal pharmacare plan that we have to actually provide their employees benefits around like chiropractor or massage because of the type of work that they do, that they are at higher risk for needing those extra services.
Thank you. Mr. Zhang on Pharmacare Reform.
I want to remind everybody, this is Pharmacare plan is nothing new come up during the election period. If you go back to the 1997 elections and 2004 elections, they're all being proposed actually by the Liberal parties. There's no reason to believe today is anything different. To have such a Pharmacare plan, we need to drastically raise the tax to implement whatever the plan. So it's of today, that's according to the Conference Board of Canada, so 98% of Canadians currently have or qualify for a prescription drug plan already. But of course, Conservative Party believe that every Canadian should have a reasonable access to the health care they need, of course. But I want to also put it into a little local flavor into Pharmacare. We have a Waterloo is the largest insurance. We have the largest insurance company working in Waterloo. They are hiring 8,500 employees. So why don't we just focus on the people who don't have a plan, and instead of changing the whole system at a huge cost, try to address everybody. It's not a major problem, but it can be addressed through a reform based on the current reforming, not a complete new solution.
Thank you. Ms. Chager?
So we are committed to defending Canada's Health Act, making absolutely clear extra billing and user fees are illegal. The last time we renegotiated the healthcare plan, just so you do know, we were not able to do it across Canada, and people saw that as not only a challenge, but not the best approach. What we did do is go province by province, territory by territory, to make it absolutely clear that we need a mental health strategy, that we need to have access to home care because of the demographics of our country. And by working province by province, territory by territory, we were able to do absolutely that. So today we have modernized the Health Act, and yes, we have more work to do, and that's exactly why I say let's get there. What we did when it comes to national pharmacare was actually go to the people who know about pharmacare. We went to pharmacists, we went to doctors, we went to Canadians, we went to academics, we went to evidence, so that we could now bulk buy medications. And we did that mostly by working with the provinces to ensure that they were on board. And when everybody came on board, today we are bulk buying medication, making it a little bit cheaper for Canadians to get their medications. We do need a national pharmacare plan. It is something that we've been talking about for a long time. The difference between the plan that the Liberals will put forward and the other parties will put forward is that we will make sure that it is created by experts, not elected officials. Elected officials can advance legislation, yes, but we need to make sure that we get it right and we do it right. We need to make sure that Canadians benefit from the program we're putting forward. So we've committed to a national pharmacare plan that will be based on evidence and expert advice, and I look forward to seeing it advance in our country.
Thank you. Ms. Trobe?
Yes, I didn't mention on the last answer, in addition to getting rid of the Canada Health Act and giving the provinces innovative options that they can come up with to address their shortages. I think Maxime Bernier touched on this last night at the debate. The People's Party will forego their GST and give that fully to the provinces, which is billions and billions of dollars, that is to go into the universal, the public part of the healthcare. So we will not collect in Ottawa the GST. We will leave it in the province, and the province can allocate that money to address the shortages. Pharmacare is an important question because pharmacare touches upon affordability. Life is becoming unaffordable. Never mind medicine. A lot of seniors, a lot of people can't afford to pay their heating bill. And when you get your heating bill and you see the actual amount of usage on your heating bill, and then you calculate the number of taxes and carbon and this and that and plus, the amount that we are paying for energy far exceeds the actual usage. There is no incentive on people to keep their houses cooler because they're going to be paying through the nose for the taxes. So affordability under our current government and flip-flopping between Conservatives and Liberals is getting worse and worse and worse. Energy is the biggest issue that people are dealing with. Pharmacare is another one. So we need to have a holistic approach. We need to make sure that our economy is roaring, because as our economy stutters and sputters, it will affect us in ways that the government cannot even begin to compensate us for. So a vital, prosperous economy is the key, and Canada can do it. Other countries are doing it, and we are falling behind. The People's Party will abolish supply management. Supply management is the dairy cartel that makes...
Ms. Trobe, can you finish your point as well, please?
Poultry, milk, and eggs 400% times more expensive than an unregulated economy. So in the US, you pay 99 cents for a dozen eggs. Here we pay $4 or $5 for a dozen eggs. So making life affordable has many tentacles, and we intend to deal with the root cause of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wright?
So yes, the evidence is very clear. Pharmacare for All is simpler, and the total cost is lower than a patchwork of solutions that don't supply the needs of every person. It troubles me that the People's Party has put on the agenda dismantling our public health care system. And what that does is it makes two levels of government, two standards of care, so that our most vulnerable people fall through the cracks, have to choose between getting childcare for their kids so they can go to work, paying their rent, or buying medicines that are needed, or going to the doctor. These are real bottom line choices that have cascading effects across our economy. And frankly, it is exactly what the Ford government is already pushing for. They have a rhetoric of wanting to protect our system, but they want to sell it off to the lowest bidder. And that is not how we build prosperity. That is not how we build a future for all Canadians. Look, this is a rich country. We deserve better, we can build better, but we do it by solving our problems, by working out the numbers, by making a plan that works for everyone. I think it's important to come back to why we fight for a strong economy, why we fight to make governments that work, civil society that works, chambers of commerce that are effective, and business communities that are effective. We do it to build a better future for our kids and to make a Canada that works for everyone now. These numbers only matter when they work for people.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell, you wanted to respond as well as Ms. Trobe?
So I actually agree with the point of my PPC colleague here in that I agree that flip-flopping back and forth between Conservatives and Liberals is what's got us into the mess that we're in today, and that we need to consider other choices and other choices that have a long history in particular and of expertise in this particular area. And obviously universal pharmacare is an area that the NDP have a historical expertise in and has been able to carry us as far as we have gotten with our healthcare, but we know that we can do better. The Liberals have had hundreds of opportunities meeting with pharmaceutical companies over the last 4 years, and they have done nothing to help lower the costs of medications and prescriptions for us, and still providing breaks and padding the pockets of the pharmaceutical corporations. We believe that we can fund the universal pharmacare by that extra 1% wealth tax, giving us $70 billion over 10 years to do that. And that money is, well, another I guess, revenue spaces that we can get that too is stopping things like, it's about making priorities and choices and stopping subsidies to fossil fuel companies and closing those tax loopholes that we spoke about before. So we have the means to fund it. We have expertise in the universal pharmacare area, and we would continue to build on that expertise to use the resources that we have, that we know that we can fund this, to move forward.
Thank you. Ms. Trobe?
Yes, I just want to make it very clear that the People's Party is not saying we will not have access to health care. If you're poor and you go to the hospital, you will have access. We will always maintain a public health care system. What we are saying is, let's remove the shackles on the provinces from being able to come up with innovative solutions to take the pressure off so that we don't have hallway medicine and people dying in corridors. And I can tell you, we are not taking care of our most vulnerable, because our most vulnerable are not getting access to doctors. Our least vulnerable are getting access to doctors. So I am not at all suggesting, I don't want to leave you with the impression, as Kirsten said, that we will not have public health care. We will always have that. So I just wanted to make that very, very clear.
Okay, Ms. Wright, you wanted to respond?
You're proposing one system for the poor and one system for the rich.
Well, I can tell you the rich, my dear, when they get a diagnosis, they make a beeline to the U.S. If it's not for a quick MRI or screen, they are out of here. And that's the other thing I want to address. You know, taxing more those with $20 billion. Let me tell you something about those very rich.
Because the U.S. system is broken doesn't mean we need to break our healthcare system.
I'm not suggesting the U.S. system. The U.S. system does not have public medicine. So it's not a fair comparison. I'm comparing us to all other countries, not the U.S., not Cuba, not North Korea.
You are putting forward misleading
Please
examples.
don't talk over each other. Please have a chance to respond.
Where were you last night?
Ms. Trobe?
So I just want to address the notion that we can solve all our problems by taxing the very rich, those who make $20 million or more a year. Let me tell you something about the very rich. They have something that we don't, and that is mobility. And we have lost a lot of our very rich people. We have lost a lot of our big investors. So they have the choice that we do not, and that is to cash out and leave Canada. So going after them is not the solution. We have to go back to the root causes and do things differently. We will always have public medicine, and we need to join the civilized world in giving access to not criminalized doctors coming to your house for a fee. And let me tell you, the free market system, what does it do? It brings prices down. So
Thanks,
if you
Ms.
want
Traub.
more competition and you want low prices in healthcare, you make it
Ms.
also.
Traub, we'll have Ms. Wright respond, and Ms. Campbell wanted to respond as well.
There's a global movement to close offshore banking free havens and build a tax system that is more fair, simpler, and lets us build industry locally. The biggest force against that is politically minded parties that are trying to protect the interests of billionaires at the expense of everyone else. It really is a case where what we need is courage, what we need is clarity, and what we need is a fair system where every person pays a fair share of our taxes, and the burdens are not placed only on small, medium-sized businesses and locally grown companies, which keep the money in our economy and supply jobs to our economy. It's misleading on healthcare and misleading on the power that we have as nations to protect our citizens and build our own economies.
Ms. Campbell to respond and to conclude this topic.
The wealth tax was just one avenue of generating some revenue. And just to be clear, that's 87 families in Canada that are within that income bracket. And we're leaving alone the first 20 million. The extra 1% on that is something that we believe will make a difference in the lives of other people. But we also know that that particular group of people is probably paying, I don't know everybody in the room, so I'm saying probably, unless you're within that group, but are paying less tax than probably each of us in this room. We're at a point in Canada where that particular group of people who are in that income bracket are actually paying less tax than their workers in their corporations and businesses. We're talking about making taxes more fair across the board, and this is one way of doing it.
Thank you. As you know, public transit is a major issue for all municipalities across Waterloo Region and Canada. All-day two-way GO passenger service is critical for the Toronto-Waterloo Region corridor. Do you support this goal, and will you work with the Connect the Corridor Coalition to make this happen? Mr. Zhang?
Definitely. Our region is very special. We are the hub of innovation and technology. You know what, I have friends working in tech startup companies. You know what they're facing today? They're facing, the problem is not startup problem. The problem is scaled up problem, because we don't have the infrastructures to support our regions to grow, to attract young families came to this region and working for this for those companies. Yes, so definitely I will support the two-way all-day GO train. But also I think Canada is why can't we build a high-speed train? It is popular in Europe. It's popular in Asian countries. I don't see there's any reasons for Canadians we cannot have a high-speed train. And I've been working with a couple of professors at UW Waterloo. They believe this is not the money issue, not the technology issue. It is we need a national strategy to build a high-speed railway. It's not only because it's good for the economy, but also we're reducing the transportation. We're reducing the carbon emission. So there are multiple benefits in terms of building a high-speed train. So yes, we also need to support a high-speed train. So right now, I believe that the major problem is that we need to further reduce the red tapes to further review. There are so many regulations are stopping us to building those infrastructure projects. I think that's a very important. So we can lay out platforms that can support further growth in terms of building infrastructure projects. Thank you.
Ms. Chagger, to all-day GO.
So first of all, when it comes to working with them. Not only will I continue working with them, but I have been working with them. And it's important that we have a strong voice in Ottawa, because one of the first things we did when we took office, or I did as your member of parliament, was to actually bring all of the MPs from the region together. And then we not only sat down with our respective mayors, but we brought the region together. And we said, the region has to fight as a whole. The reality is the riding of Waterloo alone can't fight against Toronto and the bigger communities, but the region of Waterloo is a force. And we are not only a force of innovation, we've never been single industry, and we never will be, because we continue to plan. And I want you to know that there's 48,000 projects that have been approved, and a vast majority of them are underway. This is 4 times what the previous government was able to accomplish in 4 years. And that's because we chose to invest in infrastructure, historic investments in infrastructure, because we need to be concerned with the infrastructure deficit of our country. You'll notice over the last 4 years, I've not been at ribbon cuttings, but we have been working with the province and municipalities to ensure that we are investing in public transit systems, in wastewater systems, and the list goes on, because that's exactly what our community needs. So I want you to know that moving forward, we would continue investing in green infrastructure, no differently than we did in the ION. And what the ION has done is allowed our community to grow up so we can save the farming communities around us, so that we always have access to good food. And that's why I've been saying that we do need a holistic approach, and I'm glad some of my colleagues are agreeing with it. The last point I will make is the Waterloo region set up an advocacy day on the Hill. I worked really closely with them so that they could actually have access to each of the ministers and parliamentary secretaries on Parliament Hill to understand the return on this investment. And there is a substantial return on having all day, every day go, because people want to get to their families. And so we agree that infrastructure is essential. Green infrastructure is the way forward. We've already started investing in it today. I find it ironic that my colleagues just said that he wants, fast trains, but yet we want to balance the books. Where does that money come from? We're going to need government at the table, and it's going to take all levels of government. Last thing I'll make really quickly is that
Please.
there was 21 projects that came from Ontario, of which many of them impacted Southwest Ontario, of which many impacted Waterloo. And the province submitted them to the federal government at the 11th hour on the eve of an election. We were able to work with the public service to have 7 of them be approved, and it's important that we return to Ottawa so we can have the rest of them approved, so that our economy here locally can grow, benefit the province as well as the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Trobe, on 2A Aldigo.
Yes, I think infrastructure is one of the areas where we've been subject to the biggest fails in planning, failure in execution. And one of the reasons for that is we change governments every 4 years, so the accountability period is beyond what they're interested in. So we can promise, and I know when I ran for mayor in 2014, that I had spoken to an expert at one of these business breakfast meetings, a fellow at CN, who said, they can talk about all day two-way, every couple hours, trains coming back and forth from Toronto. They can say that all day, but the problem is, look in the ground, we only have one set of tracks. We have one track going. So he said a train that's going to go that way, it's going to come back. We can't be sending trains on the same track back and forth. So over the years, over the decades, we've had a lot of promises, and this is the easiest one to make at election time with no accountability, but we simply do not have the rail infrastructure to deliver on all these promises that you're hearing. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a high-speed train from our region to the airport. But the biggest infrastructure problem, I believe, for our region is the complete failure to have dealt with our trash and waste management crisis. Our Herb Street landfill is at capacity. In a few years, it will close. We will no longer be shipping our garbage to the Herbsville landfill. We will be putting that garbage on highways, and we will be driving it around the province, and we will be driving it around the country, and eventually the federal government, which is responsible for the movement of waste and toxic materials, is going to put it on barges and ship it to other countries, hoping the problem goes away. So we have had a complete failure. Now, the biggest problem is what we're going to do to
Ms.
deal
Trobe,
with.
could you wrap up, please?
One wrap up. Our green technology. These batteries, these single-use car batteries, which were the size of an entire car, filled with chemicals. I'm asking the Greens, I'm asking everybody, what is your plan at the end of life of these car batteries, highly toxic batteries, what are you going to do with them? And also the solar panels, which are toxic, and the windmills. Where are you going to put the garbage?
Thank you. Ms. Wright, on 2A All Day Go.
So yeah, if we can buy a pipeline, we can build the essential infrastructure to connect a center like Waterloo into the global economy and into Toronto. We have a detailed plan for how to do it, and we've been advancing this for most of the 30 years we've been around.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell, on 2A All Day Go.
Okay, so I don't think I've mentioned tonight, but I'm also a PhD student, and I've been studying, except for this semester. I'm kind of busy this semester because I'm still working at my job part-time and campaigning, but I'm a PhD student in social justice education in Toronto. And so for the last 2 years, I've had to work my day job and figure out how to commute to Toronto 1 day a week in order to take classes. And I can tell you it's been a struggle. And there's, originally I tried to take the Greyhound, and then the Greyhound bus times changed, and so I had to wait 2 hours after class and couldn't take a bus back until about 9:30 at night after class, and by the time I'd get back here and get home would be midnight or after, and then I'd have to get up the next day and go to work. And there's a lot of students that are in that position. We believe in investing in transit is a win-win situation. It creates good jobs and improves productivity, and it draws investment into Ontario and the region. As an added bonus, it also improves our environment. And I know that residents in the KW would welcome the electrification to connect the corridor, to connect us more efficiently with Toronto, and while at the same time addressing issues around climate crisis. I have also advocated and worked hard with MPP Catherine Fife, and even one day took the GO bus with MPP Lindo all the way to Toronto to bring awareness to the transportation issues between our region and Toronto. Our party has designated $15 billion to our climate change fund, which includes electrifying transit and transitioning to zero-emissions vehicles while boosting clean tech research and manufacturing with Buy Canadian procurement and keeping jobs in Canada. Yes, I am in support of transportation two-way all-day go to Toronto.
Thank you. Climate change is a concern for the business community, just as it is for all Canadians. Many municipalities are passing a resolution saying there is a climate crisis. Please make your case for your party's policy approach to the environment. And to begin discussion, Ms. Chagger.
Thank you. So it is no longer free to pollute in Canada, and that's because the Liberal government federally has put a price on pollution. Every provincial government that's been elected since we took office has publicly said that they will make pollution free again. They have received a majority mandate, and so it was left to the federal government to impose a price on pollution on these provinces that don't have a plan of their own. We need to take the environment seriously. It is a reality. We have the parties on the right that say it's all about the economy. We have the parties on the left that say it's all about the environment. What we're saying is the environment and the economy go together, and we need to take them both seriously. We can no longer choose. It's the right approach. So not only have we ratified the 2015 Paris Agreement, and people will say, well, these are the previous government's targets. For me, they're a floor, not a ceiling. There's nothing wrong with us exceeding those targets to bring more people along with them. To my earlier point, there are many people who are still electing governments with no plan for the environment. We need to bring them along because it's going to take all of us. Where there is demand, there will be supply. We've committed to banning single-use plastics by 2021. People said that's not realistic. Locally and in communities across the country, people will no longer use a plastic straw. People have the reusable water containers, and the list goes on. What are the restaurants and what are our businesses doing? They're responding to where the demand is. There is very limited plastic straws, and even if you look at the fast food places today, they have paper straws because citizens are demanding better, and we should be demanding better. So not only have we put a price on pollution, we have banned plastics, single-use plastics by 2021. We are phasing out coal by 2030. Ontario's already done that, but we're working with the rest of the country. And we have committed to net zero emissions by 2050 to ensure that we stay on plan. We will have legally 5-year binding targets to ensure that we are on the plan forward. We have a very comprehensive plan that I'm very proud of, and I encourage you to check out chooseforward.ca so you can see what we've done and where we're going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jagger. Ms. Trobe on climate change?
Thank you. So the PPC stands alone in saying, of course, we have climate change. We always have, we always will. And when we have a crisis that is involved with our climate, we will have our scientists, our engineers figure it out. I can tell you that the climate emergency is a political movement. It is about separating you from your tax dollars. We have to be honest when we look at this issue. When we're building homes in floodplains and then the homes flood and then we go, oh my, it's the emergency, we need more money. If these governments were sincere about this climate emergency, what they would be talking about right now is not how they're going to tax you. They would be talking about what their evacuation plan is for the Maritimes. They would have to answer for why are we sending immigrants to New Brunswick if the seas are going to rise and all these calamitous events are going to happen. All they want is your money. Climate alarmism is about taking more of your money. I can tell you, and you should Google this because it's fascinating, in 1992, David Suzuki's young teenage daughter made an impassioned speech to the United Nations, which was almost word for word the same one that we heard from Greta. What we need here is we need less politics, less tax, we need more innovation to solve real problems. And let me tell you what really alarms me about the whole term of net carbon neutrality by the year 2050. Is that the reality is carbon does not threaten life. Carbon is not a threat to human life. In fact, carbon is the backbone of every living thing, of every molecule. So for me to hear our government saying we are striving for carbon net neutrality by 2050, I'm hearing we are striving for carbon is life net neutrality by 2050. So break these things down, analyze them, question what you're being told, Google it. I have put all of these articles, all the facts and issues and evidence on my Facebook, on my website. Educate yourself. But this climate alarm,
please wrap.
We are the only party who is saying that is nonsense. Keep your money, let's fix real problems, let's let science and engineering do what they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wright, your party's commitment to climate change?
So 30 years ago, scientists were telling us to cut back on carbon emissions. Now scientists are telling us to get in the streets. The reason it's come this far is because politicians have not listened to evidence, and they've done so in a dangerous, reckless way. The reason we're here is because lobbyists have not listened to evidence. You have a choice. You can look at Facebook. There's lots of great information coming out from Russian bots these days. You can look at Science and Nature, which are well-respected, peer-reviewed journals. I choose the latter. The other parties are debating how many steps they want to take off a cliff. The thing about cliffs is it doesn't matter how many steps you take. If you step off the edge of a cliff, you're done. If our food systems break down, we're done. If ice snaps out of existence one year, the air conditioning system that drives our weather system shuts down. You know, we don't have stable beaches for centuries. Right? These are actual things that have happened historically. There's a debate between models and the paleoclimate record. Guess what? In every instance, the paleoclimate record is worse. In every instance, as more evidence has come out, it's resolved in favor of the paleoclimate record. Our party is the only party with science-backed targets. Elizabeth May said yesterday, if you have a 4-story building, you don't use a 1-story ladder to get there. We have to do what's needed now to secure a future for our kids. We can act. It will build up everything about our future life and make a Canada that works for everyone, but there is no political noise, there is no promise, no wishful thinking that gets us there. Only starting to act gets us there. Only voting for a party that has worked on this consistently, that has provided evidence-based. Elizabeth May has the best skills to lead us, and we need leaders like that.
Ms.
As
Wright,
she said
please wrap.
yesterday, We need adults in the room who will get us past partisan politics and towards the solutions we need using evidence, using engineering, using science, using the trades. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell on climate change?
Thank you. So people are feeling the reality of the climate crisis more and more every day. And you know, the other day, I was, whether it was last week when I was in a classroom, well, it was 3 classrooms of grade 5 students, or this morning when I was speaking with students who were poli-sci students at Wilfrid Laurier University, the number one question and concern that they have is around the climate crisis. So we know it's an enormous concern for Canadians. And our climate plan is the only one that's actually strong enough to meet Canada's obligations while putting communities and families at the heart of our work. We absolutely can meet our targets and keep families and keep people safe and make sure that no part of our country gets left behind. And that is one difference between just being concerned about the environment and thinking about climate justice. We'll set tough science-based targets in line with keeping warming to the 1.5 degrees, and this means cutting our emissions significantly more than the Liberals have committed to. The Liberals continue to give more than $1 billion a year in subsidies to the fossil fuel companies, and the Conservative plan that was really written by and for the fossil fuel companies. The NDP plan makes big polluters pay their fair share. We know carbon pricing is just one tool in the fight against climate change, but our New Deal for People includes reducing emissions twice as fast than the Liberals, creating 300,000 new jobs so that nobody gets left behind and everybody can contribute in the green new future, investing in clean energy projects with a climate bank, and investing massively in transit, as we already spoke about, retrofitting homes across the country, and putting more Canadian-made zero-emission vehicles on the road. And as an aside, I am the only candidate in the Waterloo riding up here who was endorsed by one of 29 candidates across the country who was endorsed by Our Time, which is a national climate organization that is organizing for a just transition to a green economy.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Zhang on climate change?
Thank you for the question. It's a very important question. Like, this is one of the most question I heard by the doorsteps. But you know what? I agree. It's not free to pollute. Today is not everything. Everybody should be free to pollute. But the question is carbon tax. The current carbon tax get the big polluters. Let them to get away with it. So to give you the structure of the current carbon tax, they are, but 90% the carbon tax are collecting from you, from me, from our, when we go to groceries, when we drive kids to hockey rinks, and to but the actual emission. Carbon emissions it's from the consumers is only 30%. 70% of the carbon emissions are coming from factories, those big polluters. But then in current carbon tax didn't address those big polluters. So Conservative Party has a plan. We call it a real plan. The first, there's 3 pillars in this plan. The first one is continue to develop green technology, not taxes, to meet the Paris Agreement target. You know what? The Liberal government need to increase the current tonnage to...
Mr. Zhang, can you please finish your point?
Okay. You know, it's you can talk about banning single-use plastic. You can talk about planting 2 billion trees. But do you know how many trees Canada is planting today? 500 million per year. So if you only plant 2 billion trees in 10 years, you're not increasing, you're reduction. So those ideas sounds sexy, sounds fancy, may be appealing to the high school students. You know, probably meets the mentality of a drama teacher, but Canadians requires a real plan.
Thank you. Ms. Chegar, you wanted to respond, and Ms. Wright, you wanted to respond as well?
I'll tell you, I'm not sure about our federal leaders all the time, but we in the Waterloo region are better than that. We actually talk about policy, we have constructive conversations, and we advance our community. And that's what I will always do. I will always represent Waterloo first and foremost. I don't play at that level. I never have. and I never will. So I'll let you feel good about your comment, and I hope you sleep better at night tonight. But I'll tell you, when it comes to the climate plan that we have, yes, it's ambitious. Yes, it's realistic. Yes, it's doable. And we can go further than that. And my colleague's even talking about adding garbage to our landfill site and that there'll be no space. We can make better choices. Recycling started in the Waterloo region. People said it wouldn't be doable. We started it and other people caught on. We are recycling. We are green binning. If you come to my campaign office, we're really mindful of what we purchase and what we bring in, and I do that within my lifestyle as well. My family has gone from having, back in the day, numerous bags of garbage, so we can't even fill one garbage bag anymore because we're making those choices. We are demanding better, and if we demand better, we will be supplied better. The price on pollution is for everyone to pay. If you pollute, you pay. And to ensure that people can make affordable choices and that we can transition, 90% of those revenues are going back into the pockets of Canadians. So it's okay if you want to have a fancy title for your plan. Canadians need to see your plan, and Canadians need to know what you're talking about. Let's have a concrete conversation on policy. Let's find out what the options are, and I commend the other parties for at least making your plans public so that we can talk about policy rather than smear campaigns like you've now chosen to do. That's very disappointed that you would go there. I would expect better from any candidate that wants to represent the riding of Waterloo. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jagger. Ms. Wright, you want to respond as well as Ms. Campbell and Ms. Trobe?
So the Nobel Prize in Economics last year went to economists proving that prices on carbon are the most efficient way to reduce carbon. So any plan that does not include a price on carbon is either intended not to work or will be more expensive than we need to achieve the same effect. And anything you say about technology, which is not something governments directly control, or doing something with other countries, none of that amounts to a plan. I'm happy that finally the other parties have some climate targets. The truth is they're not going far enough fast enough, and it's nice that they're a floor, but we actually need targets in line with what is needed to keep Canada under 1.5 degrees. Simple as that.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
Okay, well, we know that pricing pollution reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and New Democrats believe in the evidence and the science of climate change, as do some other parties up here. But frankly, any party that doesn't put a price on carbon is being morally and economically irresponsible with our future. When it comes to the climate, when that's at play, we do need to set aside our political ideologies and find some common ground, because we only have one world to live in. And this is, I work as a consensus builder. This is why the party sought me out to run for them for leadership this time for Waterloo. And this is also why I received the only endorsement by our time, is because of my willingness and my skill set to work on the bigger issues that we all need to pay attention to.
Ms. Trobe?
Yes, the People's Party is committed to prioritizing and solving urgent environmental issues. And what we haven't talked about is what I view as very urgent is the fact that some Aboriginal communities have mercury in their water supply, that most of those communities have to boil their water, and that nothing is being done about that. We have a crisis. We have our federal government, Catherine McKenna, who authorized the dumping of 80 billion liters of raw sewage into the St. Lawrence River. That is not environmentally sound. So all that comes out of these climate alarmism is tax. That's all I hear. We want more tax, we want more money. At the end of the day, that narrative is taking the attention away from environmental issues that are imminent for us. And the toxic waste of these electric car batteries, I still have heard no answer. I've heard no answer about how
We'd recycle them.
And what was recycled was driven to the port of Vancouver and loaded onto a giant boat
No, this is
and
misinformation.
sent
Ms. Wright, you'll have a chance to respond. Just let
and
Ms. Trobe
sent
finish.
to the Philippines. And if anybody was listening to the news this summer, the Philippines has sent back and declared war on Canada for sending us, for sending them their garbage. And the reports are that if you look at the content of the garbage floating in the ocean in the Pacific, it's got labels of products that are exclusively made in Canada. So when they tell you, and this is the big farce of it, to rinse and put in your blue bin, that product with the compliments label or the President's Choice label is now floating in the Pacific. So we can pretend that we're mensches and we're doing it all right, but the bottom line is driving it around the country in trucks with the pollution of those trucks,
Ms.
and then
Trobe,
putting it on
we'll
ships.
get more responses to this. Can you finish your point?
The point is, we need to be truthful and solve real issues that affect real Canadians, and those changes will be made with a People's Party government.
Ms. Wright, you want to respond as well as Ms. Chagger after?
I don't need to. It's
Okay.
Like, I really like each of these people up here so much, and I'm so grateful that we get the chance to debate these issues. And I do think that this is what democracy should look like, is conversations like this where we actually disagree, and through disagreeing, move forward together. And that is a critical issue, right? Where there have been, policies that, try and count the number of regulations have resulted in a free-for-all on making garbage instead of value within our economy, which is why we have always advocated for producer responsibility. That brings engineering and design into the front end when we're creating our product, so it goes to making value and not making garbage. So you don't have to separate out plastic bags from your rotted letters. You can just compost that, right? And you don't have to wash and process to put something in the blue bin when it ends up in the garbage anyway. And I'm grateful that we're having this debate, that the conversation's moving forward, and that now actually so many of these parties are putting forward plans that deal with garbage at the source so that we can make more value and have more value for all of us.
Mr. Zhang, you wanted to respond to conclude
Yes,
this topic?
Yeah, I just want to, our colleagues, my Liberal colleagues keep saying we don't have details in our environmental plan. I think there's one very, very important aspect has been overlooked is we need to take the climate change fight to the global, because you know what, Canadians only consume 1.7% of the total carbon GHG emissions. If we shut down all of our factories, we don't drive to work. All the factories in China, in India, they will quickly, just generate the same amount of the emissions. So we have to take the fight to global. We have to help those those countries to apply a green technology. But look at what happened today is our bilateral relationship with this top 10 countries are just at the bottom low, especially with the USA, China, India, and Russia. They account almost 50% of the emissions, but our relationship with those countries just hit a rock bottom, because they don't think our leaders are serious. They think our leaders are hypocrite. So we need a fair trade. We need a clean trade. So it's very important to consider the global fight in terms of protecting our environment.
Thank you. Ms. Wright, you wanted a quick
Just
comment
really
on that?
quick.
And then Ms. Chagger, you wanted to respond as well?
Yeah, thank you.
I said
Quickly,
it was
please.
incoherent, not that it lacked detail. Technology plus other countries is not a plan.
Thank you. Ms. Chagger, quickly, please.
I think Ms. Campbell said it most eloquently. It is one world that we all live in, and it is about the globe. But it's interesting because the poorest countries in the world probably need the most of a hand up, and the Conservative plan is to cut international aid by 25%. And this is what doesn't add up, and that's why I'm not saying about your real plan. I'm talking about your platform, Mr. Zhang. The platform should be public so that Canadians can see it. To ensure that Canadians know what decisions they're making, we brought in the parliamentary budget officer that can now cost platforms. What we're seeing is people are now able to look at the solutions that we are proposing as political parties, and Canadians can see the cost that comes with them so that we can make more informed decisions. It's about evidence-based decision-making. The best natural renewable resource we have in the Waterloo region, it's our people. Our academic institutions have done us well. People from across the country and around the world come here. They help us learn, grow, evolve. So we will always be part of the solution, and it's important that we lead, not point fingers when it comes to the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jagger. We'll move on to closing remarks. 1 minute maximum. It's the reverse of original rotation. Kirsten Wright will speak first in her closing remarks.
Thank you. So I wanted to return to the last point. I think that we are so lucky to have such a constructive group of candidates here. And too often we get caught up in fighting with each other in the back and forth and mudslinging of partisan politics. And I think what we've heard today is real debate, meaningful conversations around questions that matter, that are at the foundation of an economy that works for all of us, of finding those innovative solutions so that we can protect our social services, make healthcare that supports our seniors and gives everyone the chance to innovate and contribute and build our economy and not only keep jobs and economic opportunity here, but share that with the world. And also around big questions about whether everything that we're so lucky to have now, can my kids have that too, right? These questions are not something in the future. My aunt lives in Puerto Rico, and so when the storms came, they had to board up their windows and go hide in the basement, and we didn't hear from them for 2 weeks.
Ms. Wright, please wrap up.
And so it's the kids I'm tucking in now. Do they eat? Do they have a future? We need to lead. We need to come together. We need a political system based on trust and innovation, and that's what we can build here in Waterloo. Vote Kirsten Wright. Join me in the fight. Come on October 21st. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Trobe, closing remarks?
Yes, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a choice on October 21st. We have a choice every 4 years. And I am in politics because I do not like having the choice among parties that are essentially all saying the same thing. Big promises, and at the end of the 4 years, we have broken promises, we have bigger debts, and we have bigger deficit. So we need to have a reset. I, as a voter, I'm not happy with the color wheel, orange, green, blue, or red. I think they failed us. And if you want to take a look at the People's Party's platform, it is online at peoplesparty.ca, erikatrobe.ca as well. Take a look, the concrete solutions, the concrete answers we have. We are the People's Party, you and me. We are about making life for Canadians better by having accountability and honesty over how we manage to get ourselves into the position we are in.
Ms. Trobe, please wrap.
If you would like bold, common sense reform, more freedoms, less government, then the People's Party platform is for you. Please check it out. And on October 21st, I would be honored to have your X next to my name, Erika Trobe. Thank you.
Ms. Jagger, closing remarks?
Thank you. So there are many issues confronting Canadians, such as climate change, reconciliation, affordability. And in order to address these and other challenges, we must take a holistic approach, one that recognizes the interconnections between the economy, education, health, social well-being, and the environment. 4 years ago, I committed to being a strong voice for you, and I knew back then that Canada could be better. We could be a just society of equity and respect for all. We could regain status on the international stage, and we could make decisions based on evidence, not ideology. I want to give a shout out to my teachers. My parents sent me to school, and we had confidence in our teachers. Our teachers guide us, they teach us, they strengthen us. I would not be here without my teachers, and I would always be proud to have a teacher go on to other professions and help strengthen our country. Canadians are better off today than they were 4 years ago. We have made progress, yet we have more work to do, and I believe that together we will do even better. I will keep working hard for you. I am asking you to choose forward and to support me, Bartis Chagger, as your Member of Parliament to represent our interests in Ottawa. Thank you so much, and especially thank you for being part of the democratic process.
Thank you, Ms. Jagger. Mr. Zhang?
Thank you. Our companies are losing our competitiveness, and our small business is struggling. There's no doubt about it, and there's 400,000 of them just in Ontario. So on October 21, who do you trust? So the question really down to, on October 21, who do you trust to make your business continue to thrive and to make your life more affordable? With so many false promises, this Liberal government cannot be trusted. So a new Conservative government will cancel the carbon tax, repeal tax increase on small business investment, exempt spouses from dividend tax, reduce federal regulations by 25%, and remove the GST from home heating, plus a universal tax cut. So you have more money in your pocket for your children and your retirement. So I'm Jerry Zhang. I'm asking you to vote a responsible and a caring Conservative government on October 21. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell, closing remarks?
Thank you for the opportunity to share a bit about myself and the NDP platform this evening. I want to live in a Canada where we can take better care of one another by reinvesting in people. With public services people can count on and a new deal for healthcare, starting with universal Pharmacare right now and going from head to toe healthcare. With affordable housing so young families can build their lives, and with a job-rich green economy to tackle the climate crisis and create 300,000 new jobs. I want to live in a Canada where we can achieve all of this by having the top 1% pay 1% more, finally paying their fair share so that Canada can reinvest in Canadians. I also want to live in a future where racism, discrimination, and homophobia have no place, and where the government puts meaningful reconciliation at the heart of every decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending this debate this afternoon. On behalf of the Chamber and Rogers, I would like to thank all candidates for taking time from their excessively busy schedules to participate in this forum tonight. I'd also like to thank the Inn of Waterloo for hosting, and of course, everyone from the community for your attendance. If you are a resident of Waterloo riding, the election date is rapidly approaching, so please ensure you're aware of your voting location. The Chamber and Rogers hope this forum has provided some relevant perspectives on your issues of concern. Thank you, and have a great evening.